The lunch crowd had begun to thin out at the small roadside restaurant. It was the kind of place people in their 50s and 60s often remembered fondly: red booth seats, soft country music humming quietly from an old speaker, and sunlight drifting in through tall windows that hadn't changed in 20 years. The scent of coffee and grilled sandwiches lingered warmly in the air. At the far side of the diner sat a man named Daniel Carter. Daniel looked to be in his early 40s. Broad shoulders, calm eyes. The kind of quiet presence that made people feel he had seen a few hard miles in life. Across from him sat his daughter, Emily, a small girl with a neat ponytail and a coloring book spread across the table. She was carefully filling in a picture with blue crayon. Daniel watched her with a gentle smile. Parenthood had softened him in ways he never expected. Years ago, Daniel had been a different man. A man who lived fast, talked louder than necessary, and carried more anger than peace. But life had a way of reshaping people. Especially when a child looked at you like you were the safest place in the world. Emily suddenly looked up. "Daddy, can I get more ketchup?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Only if you promise not to drown your fries in it this time." She giggled. Moments like that, small and ordinary, meant more to Daniel now than anything else. But across the restaurant, something else was unfolding. At a booth not far away sat a woman in her early 30s. Her name was Rachel Monroe. She looked nervous, shoulders slightly hunched, hands folded tightly together. Standing in front of her was a man leaning forward across the table. His voice was low but sharp. The tension around them was noticeable even without hearing every word. Two other men stood behind Rachel's booth, dressed in business suits, watching with impatient expressions. Rachel looked uncomfortable. Embarrassed. The man across from her slammed his palm lightly on the table. "You don't just walk away from a contract like that." Rachel's voice trembled. "I told you. I didn't know the details. I thought it was something else." Daniel's eyes lifted slowly from Emily's coloring book. He wasn't trying to listen. But sometimes tension carries through a room like a cold breeze. Emily kept coloring. The little girl in the booth behind Rachel glanced up quietly, sensing the uneasy mood in the room the way children often do. Rachel shook her head softly. "I'm not signing anything." "I'm sorry." The man leaned closer. "You don't get to be sorry." Several diners began to glance over. No one spoke. That's often how moments like this unfold. People notice, but they hope someone else will step in. Daniel watched quietly for a few seconds. Then he took a slow breath. He looked at Emily. "Sweetheart, keep coloring, okay?" Emily nodded. Daniel stood. He walked calmly across the diner. No rushing. No anger in his face. Just steady steps. When he reached the table, the man didn't even look up at first. Daniel spoke in a calm voice. "Wrong table, wrong day, gentlemen." The words were simple. But something about the way he said them made the room go quiet. The man straightened slowly. "Excuse me?" Daniel rested one hand lightly on the back of the booth. His tone stayed polite. "She said she doesn't want to sign anything." One of the suited men scoffed. "And who exactly are you?" Daniel smiled slightly. Just someone eating lunch. Rachel looked up in surprise. Her eyes moved from Daniel to the men around her. The lead man leaned forward again. This doesn't concern you. Daniel nodded slowly. You're probably right. He paused. Then added gently. But when three grown men corner a woman in a restaurant. He looked around the diner. It sort of becomes everyone's business. The room had gone completely still. Even the waitress near the counter had stopped pouring coffee. The suited man behind Rachel muttered under his breath. You don't want to get involved. Daniel studied the man calmly. For a moment, something deeper flickered behind his eyes. The kind of stillness that only comes from years of learning how to control storms inside yourself. Daniel spoke softly. I spent most of my younger life getting involved in things I shouldn't have. The lead man laughed. Oh yeah? Daniel nodded. Yeah. He leaned slightly closer. And the truth is, I'm trying real hard not to be that guy anymore. Rachel watched him carefully now. There was something in Daniel's voice. Not threatening. Just honest. But sometimes honesty carries more weight than anger. Daniel continued quietly. I've been in places where people forgot how to treat each other with basic respect. He glanced toward Emily across the diner. She's the reason I don't go back to those places. The man across the table followed Daniel's gaze. A little girl coloring peacefully. The man straightened slowly. You saying you're threatening us? Daniel shook his head gently. No. He stepped back slightly. I'm saying today's not the day. Silence settled over the booth. The tension had shifted. Not louder, but heavier. The suited men looked at one another. Then the leader exhaled sharply. This isn't worth it. He gathered the papers from the table. Rachel remained silent. Her hands still folded together. The three men turned and walked out of the diner. The door closed behind them. The room slowly breathed again. Daniel stood there another moment. Then he looked at Rachel. You okay? She nodded slowly. Yes. I think so. Her voice carried a quiet mix of relief and disbelief. Daniel gave a small nod. Good. He started to step away. But Rachel spoke softly. Wait. Daniel turned. Rachel looked at him with curious eyes. You said you spent your younger life getting involved in things. Daniel smiled faintly. Yeah. She tilted her head slightly. What kind of things? Daniel hesitated. The room was quiet again now. But not tense. Just curious. He spoke simply. I rode with some people who believed strength meant being loud, tough, and always winning. Rachel understood the meaning without him needing to explain further. Daniel continued gently. Turns out strength sometimes means sitting down, eating fries with your daughter, and choosing peace instead. Rachel smiled faintly. Your daughter's lucky. Daniel chuckled softly. Truth is, she saved me more than I saved her. Across the diner, Emily waved her crayon. Daddy! I finished the sky. Daniel smiled. He looked back at Rachel. Looks like I've got an art show waiting. Rachel laughed quietly. Thank you, Daniel. He paused. How did you know my name? Rachel pointed gently. The diner receipt sticking out of his shirt pocket. Daniel laughed. Well, I guess introductions are easier that way. He returned to his booth. Emily held up the coloring page proudly. The sky was bright blue. A little crooked, but perfect. Daniel studied it like it belonged in a museum. You know, that's the best sky I've seen all week. Emily beamed. Across the diner, Rachel watched the moment quietly. And something inside her softened. Because sometimes the strongest people in the world aren't the ones who raise their voices. They're the ones who quietly stand up for someone else. And then go back to their table to admire a child's drawing. The waitress refilled coffee cups. Someone chuckled softly near the counter. The afternoon sunlight stretched across the booths. And the diner returned to its gentle rhythm. A reminder of something many people learned slowly over the years. Kindness isn't always loud. Sometimes, it simply walks over to the wrong table on the right day.